Fly ball
Catch it.
center field. Marsh coming on. Phillies are going to the playoffs for the first time in 11 years. Woohoo! Wow. Let's go.
They got it.
Yeah. What's going on, everybody, and welcome into this edition of the Philly Sports Spot YouTube channel. I am your host, Jordan Hirsch, and now, guys, before we get into this video, please make sure you like this video and subscribe to my channel with notifications turned on so you never miss another upload. You'd also follow me on Instagram. The link will be in the description below. So, they have done it. The Phillies, for the first time since 2011, are in the postseason, and I cannot be more excited for this team, more happy for this team as well, especially after all that they had gone through this season. Phillies, of course, started this season at 21-29 through their first 50 games, and they were at that point closer to being the worst team in the league than to the final NL wildcard spot. But what a turnaround it was! Phillies fired Rob Thompson the next day after that at 22-29, and Rob Thompson took this Phillies team on a tear. Topper went 65-46 in his time as interim manager, and that interim tag better be lifted after this season. I mean, I do not think the Phillies should even run interviews at this point. Rob Thompson should just have the interim tag lifted and should be given the reins of this team going forward into 2023. But here in 2022, of course, the Phillies season was not all sunshine and rainbows after Rob Thompson took over. The Phillies, of course, made this very scary here in September, going just 10-14 in the month. Of course, very scary there. But the Phillies were able to get it done when it counted, going on a little 3-game win streak earlier this week in Washington and then in Houston. And then the Miami Marlins. How about those Marlins really helping out the Phillies up in Milwaukee? A couple of, well, really 3 late wins in that series, but a couple of late wins. This week, Brian De La Cruz coming up with a huge hit in the 9th inning of Saturday's game. And then Sunday's game, Miguel Rojas coming up with a huge hit for Miami in the 12th. Marlins would win that game 4-3. They won 3-2 on Saturday night. That got the Phillies' magic number down to 1, and the Phillies were able to do it the right way as the Brewers came back from a 4-1 deficit in the 9th on Monday, won that game 6-5 over Arizona in 10. But the Phillies were able to take care of business, and it started out with the bang as Kyle Schwarber on the first pitch of the game off Lance McCullers hitting that solo home run to give the Phillies a 1-0 lead, and Aaron Nola basically took it the rest of the way. Aaron Nola was absolutely dominant, went 6 2/3 perfect. I thought that if he was able to get Yordan Alvarez there in the 7th, that he would throw a perfect game. Unfortunately, Alvarez gets that single, Nola taken out, a batter after that. But Alvarado and then Zach Eflin, who I'll get into a little bit later, comes in and closes it out. Phillies added a couple more runs in the 8th on back-to-back homers by Bryson Stott and Kyle Schwarber. Phillies win that game 3-0 and clinch their first postseason berth in 11 years. And this is very exciting times right now for the Phillies. We're in a little bit of uncharted waters, of course. A lot of us may not even remember the last time the Phillies were in the playoffs. Of course, that last game being October 7th of 2011, the first game of the Phillies postseason. This season will be, again, October 7th, so exactly 11 years to the day. And they will face the same team that they faced back in 2011 in the St. Louis Cardinals. And some of the same players are on that Cardinals team from 2011. Of course, Adam Wainwright, Yadier Molina, and Albert Pujols were all on that team in 2011. That team ended up winning the World Series, in fact. So the Phillies looking for some revenge this week as they will take on the Cardinals in St. Louis. All games in St. Louis. This is a best-of-3 wild card series, and the first game will be tomorrow at 2:07 on ABC. Saturday's game at night, 8:37 on ESPN2, and then Sunday's game, if necessary, will also be at 8:37 on ESPN2. That game could be flexed to either 7 o'clock or 7:30, depending on how some of the other series go and if they finish up before we do. So hopefully, if the Phillies do play on Sunday, that it is at 8:37. That way it does not interfere with the Eagles game, which is at 4:25. But if it does, I think that we probably should all switch over to the Phillies. It'll only interfere with probably the last quarter or even a little, maybe the last couple minutes of that Eagles game. So probably won't be missing much there. The game will be broadcast, or will be called by Yankees play-by-play voice Michael Kay and former Yankee Alex Rodriguez. So maybe not the best crew there. I'm okay with Michael Kay. The problem is Alex Rodriguez. I think a lot of us really do not like Alex Rodriguez. I think he's the Tony Romo of Major League Baseball. So one half is okay. It could have been worse. I don't think any one of us really expected us to get the main crew. Main crew would most likely get San Diego against the Mets. I do think that is a bigger series. So the Phillies get Michael Kay and Alex Rodriguez on the call. But back to the team where it's more important because it doesn't matter who's calling the game. It matters how the team plays. And the Phillies, I think that they really do have a legitimate shot at winning this series. I could honestly see them sweeping this series. I mean, give me Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola all day long at this point, especially the way that Nola pitched his last game to get the Phillies into the postseason. And Zach Wheeler against the Cardinals this year did not allow an earned run, and I believe it was 14 innings across 2 starts against the Cardinals earlier in the season back in July. He faced Adam Wainwright both those games. Phillies won both of them. One of those games 4-0, the next game 2-0 over the Cardinals. Phillies took the season series from St. Louis as well, winning 4 out of 3. They split the series in St. Louis, 2 games apiece back in July as well. But of course, this is a very different Cardinals team. At that point, the Phillies and the Cardinals were kind of going back and forth for the wild card, and since then, St. Louis really took off, kind of just like the Phillies did. Cardinals finished with a record of 93-69 and won their division, the NL Central, very easily. So this is a much improved Cardinals team, and I also did want to look at their potential postseason roster, which does not need to be submitted until early on tomorrow. I'll also take a look at the Phillies postseason roster too. But let's look at our enemy. First, for the Cardinals, their 2 catchers most likely will be, of course, Yadier Molina and then Andrew Kisner. At first base, Paul Goldschmidt. Second base, Brendan Donovan, who has been struggling recently, especially against left-handed pitching, so something to look out for there. At shortstop, Tommy Edman, who will most likely get the start, and then Paul DeYoung as well. Nolan Arenado, of course, over at third base. And this is where the Cardinals have had some of their problems recently, and that is in the outfield. In left field, we will most likely see either Corey Dickerson or Juan Yepes. Dylan Carlson will most likely man center. And then over in right field, the Cardinals will most likely be without their starting right fielder, Tyler O'Neill, for most of the series, or for all of the series. He's dealing with a hamstring issue. So Lars Nootbaar and Alec Burleson, who's been a pleasant surprise for St. Louis, will get the right field duties. Then the starting rotations, the Cardinals have not yet announced who is going to pitch in these 3 games or 2 games. Most likely, we are assuming that it's going to be Miles Mikolas, who's been their best starter the entire season for Game 1. Game 2 will most likely be either Jose Quintana or Adam Wainwright. Quintana's been very good since coming over to St. Louis. And then whichever one of those does not get Game 2 would most likely get Game 3. Jack Flaherty, and then Jordan Montgomery will most likely be coming out of the bullpen for St. Louis. So that is my prediction for St. Louis and how they're going to use their rotation. Of course, also for the relievers for St. Louis, they've got some flamethrowers coming out of that bullpen. Rookie sensation Ryan Helsley, who has thrown the fastest pitch in baseball this season, has topped out at 104.2 miles per hour, so he will throw gas. So will Giovanni Gallegos, who's going to most likely be coming out of the bullpen. Steven Matz, Phillies know him with his time with New York. Jordan Hicks, Cardinals just got back off of the IL. He should be good to go. Andre Pallant, and then Zach Thompson, who has also been a pleasant surprise for St. Louis this season, should be coming out of the bullpen. But switching over now to the Phillies most likely roster. Of course, we know their starters. We should see Kyle Schwarber in left, Brandon Marsh or Matt Vierling, depending on who's pitching, in center, and then Nick Castellanos over in right, Alec Boehm at third, Stott at short, Gene Segura at second, and Rhys Hoskins at first, JT doing the catching. And the Phillies have announced who's going to start. It's going to be Zach Wheeler Game 1, Aaron Nola Game 2, and that if necessary, Game 3 will be started by Ranger Suarez. Phillies out of the bullpen will most likely be using Zach Eflin, who could be used as their closer. He closed out the game on Monday night against the Astros to get the Phillies to the postseason, and it is rumored that Zach Eflin could very well become the closer for this team in the playoffs. Jose Alvarado will also come out of the bullpen along with Sir Anthony Dominguez, David Robertson, potentially Brad Hand. We'll see maybe a little later on today if he gets activated off of the IL, dealing with some of that forearm tendonitis there. Andrew Bellotti should be coming out of the bullpen along with Connor Brogdon, Nick Nelson, and then 2 of the 3 remaining starters. I think it's most likely going to be Syndergaard and Bailey Falter, but Kyle Gibson could be slotted in that bullpen as well, especially if Brad Hand is not ready. And so the Phillies lineup right now is kind of a microcosm of their entire season. They've got some guys that are red hot, and some guys are going to need to step it up. Let's start with the hot players first. Kyle Schwarber, who finished the season as the National League home run leader at 46. He's the first Philly to finish as the National League home run leader since 2008, when Ryan Howard hit 48 home runs in a Phillies uniform. Schwarber has been red hot, even through a little knee injury he's been dealing with since that Washington series. Bryson Stott has also turned it around since that Washington series as well. He had a big game on Monday, going 3 for 3 with that home run in Houston. Gene Segura has been playing a little bit better. JT, of course, has had a phenomenal second half of the season, and we're going to look for him to continue that into the playoffs. And then one of the guys struggling right now is, of course, Bryce Harper. Harper hit under 200 in the month of September, but I do feel like he's just a tick off. He's missing some pitches only by a little bit. He had a lot of pitches in St. Louis, in Washington, that he just missed. Looked like he was hitting a lot of balls off a little bit off the end of the bat or getting jammed just a little bit. So hopefully Bryce Harper is able to turn it around this weekend in St. Louis. I do think that the Phillies do have themselves a guy who really could turn it around in Bryce Harper, a guy that definitely lives for the moment. Harper, one of the most clutch players in the entire league. Another guy who's been struggling a little bit has been Alec Bohm, and I really think that he's an X factor in this series. I think Alec Bohm, he's going to be batting 5th most likely, so we're kind of right in the middle of the lineup, right behind JT, who has been getting on base a lot, and I think that if Alec Bohm is able to come up with some big hits in these games, I think the Phillies really have a good chance of winning this series. But yeah, I think Alec Bohm is the X factor. Of course, the opposite of that would be if he struggles. I think it's going to be much harder for the Phillies to win this series, especially with him slotted behind those big guys early on in the lineup. I think we definitely do have a real fun series ahead of us this weekend. Of course, I did say earlier that I do think the Phillies win this series in 3, could be in 2 as well, but honestly, this series really could go either way. I also could see St. Louis winning this series. Let's hope they don't. But yeah, I think the series really is a very evenly matched series, especially the way the two teams have played throughout the season. Both teams have kind of had up and down years at some points. So I do think this series will. I think all the games are going to be close. I don't really see any of these games really being blowouts. I think both teams. I think it's really going to come down to the middle lineup for both these teams, of course, because the Phillies are going to have guys hitting behind the likes of Harper and Real Muto, and the Cardinals are going to have some of their more role players hitting behind Paul Goldschmidt, who could win the NL MVP, and then Nolan Arenado as well. So it's going to be a very fun series. I think just worth noting as well that Vegas is not liking the Phillies, not only in this series, but in the NL pennant race as a whole. Phillies are plus 1,500 to win the NL pennant. That is the worst odds in the National League. So maybe the Phillies could kind of use that as a little bit of competitive fire, the fact that they are going to be underdogs. And I think we kind of all remember the last time a Philly team was considered an underdog in the playoffs, as back in 2018. We all know what happened there with the Birds. So let's hope the Phillies could kind of get some of that mojo going, kind of like the Eagles did back in 2018, because if they do, man, this October could be real fun in Philadelphia. But I do think, I mean, at the very least, I'm satisfied that they made it. I do think that this season is a successful season no matter what happens in the playoffs, but boy, would it be nice to at least win this series and get this fan base at least one home playoff game in the NLDS. If the Phillies did advance, they would take on the Atlanta Braves. In the NLDS, the first 2 games would be at home in that series, but Game 3 would be in Philadelphia, and I really just want to see how loud the Citizens Bank Park can get. Last time the Phillies were in the playoffs, I was watching the Phillies, but I didn't obviously follow them as much as I do now. It was 11 years ago. I was 8 years old at the time, so I don't remember much of it. And I think it would just be really cool to see Citizens Bank Park come out in full force with the Phillies in the playoffs. I think it really is something that this fan base has been yearning for the last 11 years, and would be just really, really cool to see. Alright, that is going to wrap things up for this edition of the Philly Sports Spot YouTube channel. Again, make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to my channel with notifications turned on so you never miss another upload. I typically post every Saturday, posting Thursday this week, though, for this Phillies playoff preview. Make sure you guys are also following me on Instagram. The link will be down in the description below, or you could just look me up. It's at Philly Sports Spot. That's PhillysSportSpot. So just one S between sport and spot. And until next time, guys, let's go Phils. We are in the playoffs.